I think what would be really helpful is to talk about a list of symptoms of perimenopause that are very, very common to many women. Now, of course, not all women are going to experience all of these. Some women are going to experience very few of these, but every woman's journey in perimenopause and menopause is different. And I wanted to be able to give women some sense of sanity throughout this time of life. Are you in perimenopause or menopause and just feel like your body is changing and you have no control over it? I get you. I'm in perimenopause as well. And I'm really excited to dive into today's topic, which is really understanding what are all of the signs of perimenopause and menopause and what can we do about it? Welcome back to the Energetically Efficient Show. I'm Kristin Rowell, and I'm really excited to bring this topic to you today. So I started experiencing perimenopausal changes a couple of years ago, and mine were wide-ranging and very interesting because some of them I never would have realized were associated with perimenopause until I started doing my research. So I want to just go through today. I think what would be really helpful is to talk about a list of symptoms of perimenopause that are very, very common to many women. Now, of course, not all women are going to experience all of these. Some women are going to experience very few of these, but every woman's journey in perimenopause and menopause is different. And I wanted to be able to give women some sense of sanity throughout this time of life to know that if you are experiencing these symptoms, you are not alone and there is something that you can do about it. So as I start, I want to just read from you a paper that I found. I want to just read part of the paper. I'm not going to read you the whole paper. That would be horribly boring. But I want to read from you a paper I found from the Journal of Midlife Health, and this is from December of 2019. This is a scientific paper that's titled Weight Management Module for Perimenopausal Women, a Practical Guide for Gynecologists. And it's funny, I have some gynecologist friends that I should reach out to and ask them about this particular paper, but I was so struck by one of these summary statements at the very beginning of this paper because I thought, oh my God, this sounds like we're like in the middle of some sort of death sentence when we go into perimenopause and menopause. And you guys, I'm here to tell you, we really aren't. Like, I love helping women burn fat and gain lean muscle tissue during this complicated time of life. And it truly is one of my specialties. I'm very, very good at it. And I do it for myself as well. But let me read you what this paper said because I found it fascinating. Here's what it says. Menopause has been identified as a high-risk stage for weight gain in a woman's life cycle. Great. That's just awesome. That's the first sentence. Let me read the rest to you. Menopause-related weight gain is a consequence of low circulating estrogen levels due to progressive loss of ovarian function. So I found that pretty interesting. Moreover, the changes in the hormonal milieu, chronological aging, decline in physical activity, coupled with westernized dietary pattern and recurrent emotional eating episodes associated with psychological distress also contribute to the increase in total body fat and waist circumference. Doesn't that just sound pleasant on so many levels? What I'm here to tell you is that so much of this is within your control. So notice, and I thought this was such a key point in this research, the writers say menopause-related weight gain is a consequence of low circulating estrogen levels due to progressive loss of ovarian function. And then there's a period at the end of that sentence. That's sort of a full stop sentence. They're really saying, at least their conclusion with this particular paper, is that the weight gain is largely a consequence of low circulating estrogen levels because of what's happening to our ovaries at this time of life. They go on to then say that, moreover, there's this changes in hormonal milieu, there's a chronological aging, there's a decline in physical activity, we have this Western diet, we emotionally eat at this time of life. They're not saying, and I think this is just critical for women to hear, they're not saying that all of those other things are perimenopause, or that they're causing all of these perimenopausal symptoms. They're basically saying, and this is something that I would say also is so critical for women to understand, yes, hormone changes are happening at this time of life, and there's this bucket of other things that many women are experiencing changes in, which get sort of lumped into, oh, it's all just perimenopause. Oh, you're just screwed at this time of life. Oh, it's just perimenopause, when that just doesn't have to be the case. So what I'm here to tell you is when I read to you a lot of these symptoms and we talk about this checklist, for you to look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I in perimenopause? Am I in menopause? I think this is just a great list for you to consider. Of this list, what is it that I control? And I just mean there is so much of it that you can control. Okay. So let's talk about this list. And I want to go through a number of things with you because the list is pretty long and wide ranging. So the first thing that most women notice when they enter perimenopause or menopause is to say that they experience changes in their menstruation. So this may mean that your cycles get shorter. You all of a sudden notice, oh my gosh, I had my cycle 2 weeks ago and I'm bleeding again. What's going on with that? Or, oh, I usually cycle every 28 days, 29 days, 30 days, whatever your normal cycle pattern is. And now all of a sudden it's 40 days, 45 days. Maybe you go 2 or 3 months without a cycle. And then all of a sudden you'll get it for 2 weeks in a row. So those can be different things that happen. You might have spotting between your periods where you don't have a full cycle, but you have some sort of spotting. You might have very heavy bleeding. You might experience clotting during menstruation. Essentially, I want you to think of the perimenopausal time of life as we're basically going through reverse puberty. So remember how many changes were happening in your body in your teenage years, whenever it was that you had your first period. You're basically entering your menstruating cycle time of life at that stage. And now we're exiting it at this perimenopause and menopausal stage of life. And so it's just interesting to note that you're going to experience lots of different changes. Another category of changes that many women report in the perimenopausal time of life is in a category that I'll refer to as sort of the neurological category, or the things that can affect the senses. And for me, when I first heard that this particular sign that I'm about to tell you is one of the most common symptoms of perimenopause, I was shocked. Because normally we think of perimenopause means hot flashes. Perimenopause means I don't sleep at night. Perimenopause means I gain weight. But this is a really, really common sign. And I've had friends that have experienced this, and it's very disconcerting, and that is vertigo. Vertigo is a classic sign of perimenopause. And so if you're experiencing vertigo, please listen to this episode because there are things that you can do about it. And I just want you to tap into whether there are other symptoms you're also experiencing. So it may not be full vertigo. It may just be that you're really dizzy. It may be that you experience tingling in your fingers or tingling in your feet. You may experience tinnitus, like a ringing in your ears. So it's this sensory and neurological stuff that you start to notice. You may have a newfound sensitivity to light or sound. That's a very interesting one. It may just be harder for you to experience extreme light or extreme sound from your central nervous system. And you also may experience migraines at this time of life. Now, I've always said, and I truly believe this is true, that migraines are truly a sign that you have some level of inflammation in your body, because migraines aren't just random, you guys. And I say this all the time about so many things. Really, nothing is random. I don't believe anything is random. It's not like, oh, I just started to get this rash, or, oh, I just started to get this annoying ringing in my ears, or, oh, I just started to notice whatever the symptom is. It's a sign to you that you need to dig deeper because something is trying to get your attention because it's wrong with your body. So in terms of perimenopausal symptoms, the menstrual changes that I mentioned and the neurological and sensory category of changes are 2 of the primary changes. The other one that I would say is probably the most common that people talk about is the symptoms that are in the vasomotor category. So these are the vasomotor symptoms of perimenopause. So these are things like your hot flashes. This is probably the classic sign of perimenopause that most women think of, but hot flashes is one of them. Night sweats is sort of the other awesome symptom that many women will experience. They also may experience cold flashes or chills after they have a hot flash. They may notice flushing or red face. It could be associated with the hot flashes or the night sweats. It may not. And they also may notice that when they are experiencing those night sweats, they have just a fair amount of sweating generally during sleep. I think for me, when I started my perimenopausal journey, I only noticed the hot flashes or the night sweats. I didn't experience, maybe I experienced one hot flash, possibly, but I might have experienced a night sweat or 2. But I really started to nip things in the bud quickly because I noticed, and I also just have done a tremendous amount of research over the years, that there's so much you can control at the perimenopausal time of life, and we will get to that soon. So another category that many women report in the perimenopausal time of life is the category that is in the cognitive and mental health category. So this could range from anything of I'm experiencing tremendous brain fog, or I walked into this other room and I don't remember what I came in here for, but I know that I came in to get something and I don't remember what it was. It could be those kinds of things, all the way to I am so depressed, or I'm having this extreme mood swings, or I'm super angry or irritable, or I don't even want to leave my house. Okay. So there's a ton in this particular category, but keep in mind at this time of life, we are having hormonal changes. And so hormonal changes can create all sorts of different calamity in our body. Again, remember how, I'll use this term, I'll just call myself this. Remember how psychotic you were as a 14, 15, or 16-year-old girl. When you were in the massive onset of puberty, you may notice that you were quite dramatic, quite emotional, quite rageful at times, and maybe even a little anxious or depressed. So those things can also happen. So I'll just read a few more of these from the list that I created for you. So I already mentioned the brain fog. I mentioned the forgetfulness and the word finding difficulties. I don't know if I said that one already, but certainly the word finding difficulties. It's like something's on the tip of your tongue and you just can't think of the word. That tends to happen more in perimenopause, as does difficulty concentrating or multitasking. So if you used to be the master of being able to do 3 or 4 things at once, and now it's like, oh my God, it's like, I'm lucky if I can get one thing done at a time. That also can be a sign of perimenopause. You may experience an increased sensitivity to stress. And I will say that this was something for me that became particularly heightened because this was a time of life where I literally had to stop drinking caffeine at all. Now, I always say, and I've talked about this plenty of times on this podcast, I've always had a love-hate relationship with caffeine, which is I love it when I'm drinking it, and I hate it when I have to quit because it is so hard for me to quit, but I really am off it now. And I just noticed that I'm better in so many different areas. So if you're someone who experiences any form of even a mild kind of anxiety, I really encourage you to not drink caffeine whatsoever because it really is going to worsen your anxiety. I already mentioned the depression or mood swings. I mentioned the rage, but then just a generalized emotional reactivity or crying easily. Again, don't forget, perimenopausal time of life is the opposite of the puberty time of life, and both times of life cause this extreme emotional reactivity and this emotional outburst that can happen. So just be gentle with yourself at this time of life and know that that can be completely normal. Okay. Sleep disturbances is another one. So this is a totally separate category. So you may have insomnia or difficulty falling asleep. You may feel wired but tired. Your sleep may be restless. You may be waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., not being able to get back to sleep. You may have vivid or disturbing dreams, and you may experience daytime fatigue or exhaustion. So I already have recorded for you guys a podcast about blood sugar regulation. I've done all sorts of podcast episodes about macros, other things. And keep in mind, we can't just call all of this perimenopause. Certainly, when you experience some sleep disturbances and you have a hard time falling asleep, you can't stay asleep, there's some issues like that. I will say that the number one cause for that in perimenopause time of life is that you are suffering from low progesterone. So you may benefit from a progesterone supplement. So I just recommend that you talk to your doctor, whether it's a Western medicine doctor or your naturopathic doctor, someone who can work with you on a hormone therapy protocol, because I find it, for my personal experience, I'll just speak from that because I obviously can't prescribe hormones. That's outside of my scope of practice, but I can tell you about my own anecdotal experience. And for me, when I started taking oral progesterone at night, I only take 100 milligrams. It makes a significant difference in my sleep. It makes me feel so much better. And it really, really got rid of any and all night sweats that I was experiencing. So I only had those, I think, once, maybe twice. I haven't had a hot flash since. I take, in case anyone's interested, I take hormone replacement therapy. I started that about 1.5 years ago. So I take a combination of an estrogen and testosterone cream mix, and then I take an oral progesterone. And that's just the protocol that I'm on right now. I may switch at some point to the patch. So I may do the patch for estrogen at some point and a testosterone cream. But for me, what I wanted to do right now is a combo cream, and that seems to work really well for me instead of the patch. And I'm working on that with my Western medicine doctor who's come up with this protocol with me, and he's a very integrative and functional type of provider, which I really enjoy. So if that's helpful to you, just note that if you're experiencing extreme sleep disturbances, consider talking to your provider about whether progesterone could help you, because that is something that can be very common for women in perimenopause. And that dovetails into my next topic, which is the hormonal imbalances. This is the biggest thing that we're noticing at this time of life. And so just as a reminder, your hormonal cascade starts this way. I want you to picture it's like a fountain. I've talked about this on other episodes, but at the top of the hormonal cascade is oxytocin. That is our master hormone. That is the hormone that we release because we love someone. We look into the eyes of someone we love. For women, we release this when we breastfeed. We release this when we hold our baby. For all humans, you release oxytocin when you have an orgasm. It is really the love, cuddly, ooey gooey hormone that we seek, that we really, really enjoy. And so that's your master hormone. And underneath that hormone, it drives down to cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And cortisol is a hormone that's released from your adrenals adrenal glands. And so the cortisol hormone will come out from your adrenal glands, and then your adrenal glands, or your cortisol hormone rather, drives down to insulin, which is a hormone that's released from your pancreas. And all of those top-down hormones, oxytocin, cortisol, and insulin, are all top-down, which then drive down and affect your sex hormones, which are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So if you have dysregulation in your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, I always recommend that you start upstream first, and that we look at what's happening with your oxytocin, what's happening with your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and what's happening with your insulin, which is really this hormone that helps to regulate our blood sugar. So listen to my other episodes about blood sugar to learn more about that, because you can do a lot of that on your own through diet. So in this hormonal balances category, you may have these estrogen dominant symptoms. You may have, like I already mentioned, low progesterone symptoms. The other symptom I don't want to miss talking about, which is so significant with progesterone, is when you start to lose progesterone, you can experience tremendous anxiety. Okay. Low progesterone is associated with anxiety. So if you're noticing all of a sudden you feel more anxious, you feel more worrisome, you can't understand why you're experiencing this anxiousness, then you really want to consider talking to your provider about progesterone. You also may experience, I already mentioned cortisol, but some cortisol dysregulation at this time of life, because again, we become more sensitive to stress. And then all of these things that we've already talked about can affect our thyroid function. So some women will have a very amazing thyroid and thyroid function for most of their life, and all of a sudden they hit perimenopause and they'll notice changes in their thyroid. So make sure that you're getting your thyroid markers checked when you get your blood work done. And I recommend a full thyroid panel, which is going to check for 4 things. That's going to check for your TSH, your free T4, which is just your T4, your free T3, and your reverse T3. If you suspect that you have some level of thyroid dysfunction, you need all 4 of those markers for you're actually to understand whether your thyroid is working properly. And if you find a provider that tells you that's not true, they don't know what they're talking about. There is such a misconception out there in the marketplace that all you need is TSH and maybe a T4 to see how your thyroid's functioning, but you have no idea how your thyroid is functioning unless you also know what your free T3 and your reverse T3 numbers are. So make sure you talk to your provider about that. And if they don't agree with you, then find a different provider, because there is a lot of research out on that. And I've learned from the best experts on that topic. So you want your reverse T3 and your T3 specifically. Okay. You may also, during perimenopause, experience some cardiovascular symptoms, which can be heart palpitations or racing heart. You may experience blood pressure fluctuations. You might even have an increased LDL or total cholesterol. And like I mentioned, with the sensitivity to stress, you may also experience a new sensitivity to caffeine or alcohol. It might just get harder for you to be able to ingest those things and tolerate them well. Certainly that was the case for me with both caffeine and I'd say alcohol, because I rarely, if ever, drink it anymore. And so you just notice that your body doesn't tolerate those things as well as it used to when you were in your 20s and 30s and even early 40s. Okay. And then there are a few other categories here that I want to talk about because I think they're important to mention. You may experience some different symptoms in the sexual or genitals category. So you may experience vaginal dryness. You may have different sort of like increased UTIs where you have more urinary tract infections. And that would happen because the microbiome of that area is changing. And so I just want to give a plug for one of my favorite supplements. I personally take this. There's a new supplement from Microbiome Labs. It's called Vaginal Balance, and it is perfectly formulated for certain strains of probiotics that designed to support the vaginal mucosa. So just like you have a microbiome in your gut, you have a vaginal microbiome. And so your vaginal microbiome needs support as well. And so I really like this new supplement product from Microbiome Labs called Vaginal Balance. And I'll put a link below this podcast episode so that you can check that out if you want to use that yourself and if you want to try it. The other thing that I may try at some point, which one of my good girlfriends who's a naturopathic doctor recommended to me, is, and I say this because for me personally, I've enjoyed the experience of having the oral progesterone. So I just take that as a pill. And then I do estrogen and testosterone cream. And my estrogen is a mix of E2 and E3. I did a ton of research before I decided to go that route. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to add E3 to the E2. It's estradiol is E2 and estriol is E3. Or is it estrone is E3? Forgive me. I'll double check that. But in any event, I made sure that I wanted to do E2 and E3. The problem is sometimes E3 can get a little crazy and you need to tamp it down with something. So I actually also take an Estrodim supplement. But I say all of this because E3 in particular can be very good for the vaginal microbiome And it can be very good for the elasticity of the vaginal walls. And I learned this from my naturopathic doctor friend. So what she said that she's trying right now, and I may try this next, is to do a patch of E2, which is the only FDA-approved delivery mechanism for estrogen. So you would do an estrogen patch, and then you would do an E3 pill, an insert that you insert directly into your vagina in the evening before bed, because that can really help the vaginal wall, and it can also help with the microbiome of the vagina. So I may try that at some point, but right now the creams are working for me, and so that's what I'm doing. So hopefully that is interesting. Of course, decreased libido is something that women experience during perimenopause. I personally believe that in addition to the hormonal changes that we have, that can also be a function of having blood sugar dysregulation and not having enough muscle mass on your body, so you're not producing enough testosterone. So there's all sorts of natural remedies that we can do. We can increase that. But some women need testosterone. I certainly needed it, was not experiencing enough. My testosterone, you want for women it to be between like 70 and 90 and to be optimal. And mine was a 9 when I had my test done. So I was very disappointed to see that. So I'm happy that I'm optimizing that in a better way now. You might also experience musculoskeletal changes, although I will say, okay, and this is, I'll say 2 things about this. Number 1, if you are not strength training at this time of life, like what are you even doing with your life? Like, I'm sorry, you guys, you know that Discover Strength, I'm putting a plug for them here. Discover Strength is the best place on planet Earth to be able to build muscle efficiently and effectively, because it's only 30 minutes twice a week. I sing about it from the rooftops as often as possible. I can't say enough good things about this particular gym. So much so, of course, that I invested in it, and I'll be opening it in Nashville in this year in 2025. But you may experience joint pain or stiffness in the musculoskeletal department at this time of life because you aren't lifting. Okay, so it could be because of that. There also may be a hormonal component to it. There are a lot of women who experience something called frozen shoulder in perimenopause. So that is a very common symptom of perimenopause, which I find fascinating. But you may have some back pain. You may have some muscle aches, loss of muscle tone, increased risk of osteoporosis. All of these things, so you guys, can be course corrected through strength training. So I am not going to even say that there's a musculoskeletal component to perimenopause. I'm going to say that you are just aging and you're not taking care of your body by strength training. So I'll beat that drum all day long. Skin hair appearance can change just because of changes in your hormones. So skin hair, meaning things like your hair might get drier, your skin might get drier. You may have itchy skin, especially at night. A lot of this honestly can come from a nutritional deficiency with not having enough essential fatty acids, especially because all of us who are in perimenopause and menopause right now, we're all of those kids that were brought up in the 80s, and we were eating all sorts of things that were fat-free. So we had major fatty acid deficiencies because we thought eating carrots, pretzels, and Snackwells was a healthy diet. Don't get me started on the garbage I used to eat in high school. And so I just want you to make sure that you know that if you're experiencing dry skin, you should be taking a very high quality fish oil, because fish oil is something that most perimenopausal women need. I take this particular supplement. It's called Optimal EFAs, and it's from Biotics Research. I absolutely love it. I will put a link below this video. It truly, in my opinion, is the best fish oil on the planet. This company, I love Biotics Research for a number of reasons. I've toured their facility 2 different times, but when it comes to fish oil, I think they do it better than anyone around. They literally, every single bottle of their fish oil, they can trace it back to the boat that the fish were caught on. They only use anchovies from the South Pacific, so you're not getting any sort of tuna or mackerel or swordfish or any other fish that can cause mercury and other heavy metal toxicity in your body. I can't say enough good things about Biotics fish oil. It is the only one I take, and it's the only one I recommend to my clients. I just love it. But in this hair, skin, and nails category, you may notice thinning hair or hair loss. This can be associated with thyroid dysfunction, which can be downstream from some of that other hormonal dysregulation. You may notice increased facial hair, especially if you're someone who gets on testosterone. You may notice that you start to get some facial hair. Some women experience easy bruising, but I will tell you, if you experience easy bruising, it is nutrient deficiencies. So you really need to be taking high quality supplements and or pumping up your diet. And then some other women will notice things like some breast tenderness or fullness. They'll notice things like increased PMS symptoms. I've sort of already talked about that. You may have digestive and GI symptoms, but everything other than the primary ones that I highlighted, I really think aren't to blame perimenopause for. They're to blame our diet. They're to blame our lifestyle. It's like, are we eating really good, real quality foods? Are we getting enough protein? Are we consuming enough fiber? Are we actually filling ourselves with fermented foods? So we're getting good sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, yogurt, all sorts of things like that. All of these things are so incredible for our body that we really need to focus on that. So I would be remiss if I did not invite you into my most amazing new course that I have created for you that I am teaching live that is called Hot and Fit AF over 40. This course starts on August 26th. I cannot wait to get this course out into the world. The women who have already registered for it are incredible. I am so excited for those of you who have not registered for this course yet. I would love, love, love to have you in this course. This is 12 weeks of live coaching with me. This is just like getting me in one-on-one personalized coaching, except we're going to be doing this in a group setting. So there's 8 deep dive modules on everything from hormones to nutrients for fat loss to peptides, all sorts of things I'm going to be teaching you about in this course. And then I'm going to have a separate 4-hour-long Q&A sessions with me throughout the course of the 3 months. So this is the only way to get direct access to me other than my private one-on-one coaching, which at this point is pretty expensive to work with me one-on-one. So if you would like to sign up for this course, I will put a link below. I would love to have you. You can always reach out to info@Energetically Efficient. If you have any questions about this course, you can also DM me on Instagram at Kristin_Rowell_. I would love to hear from you. I would love to have you in this course. If you're someone who's struggling and you really want to lose fat and maintain your lean muscle tissue or gain lean muscle tissue at this time of life, I promise you, you can do it. I have tons of testimonials, tons of before and after photos, and amazing DEXA scans and bod pods results from clients that I've been serving, hundreds of female clients in this stage of life, and I would love to serve you as well. So check out the links below this video. We will see you for another episode of the Energetically Efficient Show soon, and thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.